Let's go to our chief national security correspondent, Jennifer Griffin. She's at the Pentagon. Good morning, Jennifer.
Good morning.
Hi, Lawrence. I'm here in the D.C. Bureau, but I just want to point out that almost exactly 5 hours ago, we got the first alert that the Israeli missiles and the U.S. missiles had struck Iran. It was a joint operation from the get-go. I'm told that this operation will last not hours, but days. This is an open-ended operation with a wide variety of targets. I'm told from a senior U.S. military official that the U.S. is focusing on military targets, on ballistic missile sites, on anything that could pose an immediate threat on the Iranian Navy, but the Israelis are targeting Iran's leadership. So any of the targets that you hear about, the Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei being targeted, the defense minister being targeted, those are being carried out by the Israelis. Let me mention some of the targets that we know were hit this morning in Tehran: the Defense Ministry, the Parliament, the National Supreme Council, the Ministry of Intelligence, the Iranian Atomic Energy Agency. There have been cyber attacks across Iran, and the internet is not up and working, but the cyber attacks have focused on the news agencies like IRNA, which is the state-run television. The U.S. military has also targeted down in the south the naval bases in Bandar Abbas as well as in Kark Island. And then what's also interesting is out in the east of Iran, there's a target near Tabriz and Kermanshah, which is the IRGC aerospace forces. That's significant because that's where they would have been developing those long-range ballistic missiles, satellites that also could have been part of that intercontinental ballistic missile program that they were trying to develop that the president referenced. But the biggest problem right now is the stockpile of cruise missiles and ballistic missiles that the Iranians built up since last summer, because they were terribly degraded last summer in the 12-day war. But they have been working to rebuild that missile supply. We're seeing some of those missiles being fired at Israel. As Trey reported, they have, for the most part, been intercepted by the air defenses. But of all of the U.S. military bases in the Gulf, the only country where U.S. bases were not targeted this morning is Oman. And of course, Oman's foreign minister had been leading and mediating those talks in Geneva, and then came here to Washington to lobby Vice President J.D. Vance to try and avert what we've seen happening in the last 5 hours, and which is basically turning into a regional conflict. But there have been interceptions. The Qatari government has intercepted missiles fired toward U.S. base, the Al Udeid Air Base, the largest air base in the Middle East. That's a U.S. base. Then in Bahrain, we did see one missile land, but I'm told that there are no casualties, and it hit an empty warehouse. So we are getting increasing reports. This is ongoing. But I'll throw it back to you at this point.
Jennifer, you had mentioned that we are there. The U.S. is focused on the ballistic missiles and Israel's focusing on the leadership. What about an Operation Midnight Hammer? That happened in the middle of the night there. This did not. It was daylight there. Will you talk about the significance? And also, are we focused on going after the rebuilding of the nuclear program there? Were we targeted before with Operation Hammer?
I think what we've seen so far, Ainsley, is that there are some nuclear targets that have been included. We've seen explosions in Bushehr. There's a nuclear reactor there. There's a site near Qom, which is just south of Tehran, that we know to be linked to the nuclear program. We haven't heard yet that there have been strikes on the 3 sites that were struck last summer. But it is likely that there will be strikes on those sites because the Iranians have been rebuilding. There's been activity seen through satellite imagery of vehicles outside of Natanz, Isfahan, and Fordo. So I would expect those would be struck again, but I also would expect the kind of weapons that maybe would strike that would be delivered by a B-2 bomber, and we have not seen evidence that the B-2s have been engaged in this first line of attacks. In terms of the daylight and choosing the daylight, After last summer, it was very important to be able to still have some element of surprise. And unfortunately, given the open source intelligence these days, the amount of satellites, the ship spotters, the flight trackers, it's very hard for the U.S. military to move without people seeing what their assets are doing. So I think by striking during the day, there was an element of surprise. It's Ramadan. And I think those initial strikes targeting, one of the first strikes was targeting Iran's supreme leader's compound, Ali Khamenei, who has been the leader of Iran since 1989. If you can imagine, he's the longest serving leader in the Middle East. His compound was targeted, and I think they probably wanted to lure the Iranian leadership into some bit of complacency and assuming that they would be home or in their offices during daylight hours. It also is a sign that they feel pretty confident that they control the air above Iran and that the air defense systems are not as strong as they were last summer. They were degraded quite a bit in the 12-day war. Obviously, they can't take any chances, and I would suspect that a lot of these initial strikes were carried out by Tomahawk missiles from Navy warships that are based in the Arabian Sea. There are a lot of destroyers there attached to the USS Abraham Lincoln. And USS Abraham Lincoln. And then also I would expect standoff weapons from warplanes that might be able to fire weapons that can fire without being in Iranian airspace while they see whether that air defense system is still working.
Jennifer, when you look at Midnight Hammer, okay, middle of the night, got it, was a quick operation, and then after 12 days it was done. It might be interesting that you start at 8 in the morning local time. Maybe by the time it gets dark, they're out of power. And then we really can light up the skies. And we could take down there with cyber attacks and with physical attacks, various operations. You think that could be part of the battle plan?
I think what we're going to see are rolling operations, and I think that what we see tonight will probably light up the skies, as you said. But this first phase was targeting Iran's leadership, their top leaders, the head of the IRGC. We don't have the battle damage assessment, and we don't have confirmation of those deaths yet. But that, again, the Israeli military has been responsible for that targeting. But I think you're right, Brian, that when it's dark, there are going to be different targets, different weapon systems used. But in daylight hours, I would almost guarantee that there were a lot of Tomahawks used.
All right. Jennifer Griffin, thank you so much for your reporting.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.